so grateful to be here because I came to this conference that was scheduled for last week. When it was pushed off, I realized I could come to the Qur'an study group possibly. So that was just like a gift from Allah that I could be in two places. So that's really wonderful. In terms of being punctual, I'm glad to hear that not everybody was punctual actually, because we were not punctual.
You want to excuse me because you're in trouble.
No, but from the Middle East, what's funny? There's no punctuality. So on the way in, I said, all right, I need to be happy. We can't just be, oh, I'm late, you know. So I said, we're early. It's 11:15 instead of 11. And Sister Fazia said, I love you, Rebecca. So I think that happiness can help open the heart and help people love more. I want to, so we have to try to be in a happy mood also, like keep your happiness up. Okay, so for the Jewish views on love, I want to start with the classic sources, of course, in the Al-Kitab, and then some of our Hadith, which we call Mishnah and Midrash, and Talmud, and then the Chassidic masters, and finally a view of what it means to love within an ummah, within an am, and then a little bit of just some things I thought of. I think I just said, oh, I'll put the right, thoughts in my head. So just some other ideas that may just to apply it to your life. So the central thing, oh, it's up here. So
I'll go through that.
Yeah, okay. So Leviticus 19:18 is the central, that's considered the central teaching. And the whole thing is, thou shalt not take vengeance, nor bear any grudge against the children of thy people, it seems to be Jews, but thou shalt love thy neighbor, that's somebody else, as thyself. I am the Lord. So already in the first verse, we have a reference to, it seems, Jews and humanity. It's not just exclusive to Ummah. It's 1933, and if a stranger, so that's somebody completely different, sojourn with thee in your land, you shall do him no wrong. The stranger that sojourneth with you shall be unto you as the homeborn among you, and thou shalt love him as thyself. For ye are strangers in the land of Egypt. I am the Lord your God. Now, Hillel, in the 1st century BCE, was a Tana, which means one of the sages of the Mishnah, which is our oral law. Rabbinic Jews believe in the oral law, which is the Talmud, the Mishnah and the Talmud. A certain heathen came before Shammai, a rabbi of his generation. Hillel and Shammai had completely different schools of thought, but they were good friends. Actually, I just want to share. They would argue in the study room and, disagree terribly about things. In fact, Shammai held, we have the Hanukkah candles, Shammai held you light 8, and then 7, then 6, then 5 every day. You light fewer. And Hillel said, no, we light from 1 to 8, and we follow the school of Hillel. Nobody followed Shammai. But there's an idea that Shammai was on such a high level that nobody could really attain it. So it's not that he was wrong, but just not really for us. But that's the case. They were competitors, but they were great friends, and it says that they would leave the study hall hand in hand. Anyway, so on the condition that you teach me the whole Torah while I stand on one foot, Shammai chased him away. When he came before Hillel replied, what is hateful to you, do not do to your neighbor. That is the whole Torah. All the rest is commentary. Go and learn it. This seems to preach unconditional love. Just love your neighbor. At the same time, the same Rabbi Hillel says, be of the disciples Aharon, and you also know that he is a lover of peace, pursuing peace. Love your fellow creatures and bring them near the Torah. So isn't it enough to just love everybody? So here's a thread where really just like your love for the sister from France said, let's make sure she says the honest way. That's bringing out her best, right? Sometimes correcting people is actually a form of love. It's often a form of love and it's done from love. And in a way, believers are responsible to remember that we are here to bring other people towards Allah. Not necessarily by preaching or by nagging or anything, but it can just be like by personal example that is part of our responsibility. As we say, shlichut, how do I, messenger, our message, our reason for being here is partly we are supposed to think that the best for people is being close to Allah, so part of that is going to depend on our personal responsibility. And that can happen when we're dealing with people that leave the straight path or that aren't religious. I was just reading, I didn't write it here, but to keep in mind that when we love a non-believer, wherever they're coming from, we don't want to dilute our message. We don't want to dilute the religion and make it easier for them or couch it in terms that are terribly politically correct. Sometimes we've got to be straight with people. I won't say exactly what the topic was, but Sister Fazia and I, the other night, were speaking to a woman, and we were basically straight with her about a certain topic. We're not to get there, but it would have been unfair to couch it in terms that she could hear. We really needed to be straight with her. We would both our traditions say, and that's what we have to work with. And she respected us. My daughter has a very good friend who went off the straight path. She is married, but she's living a secular life, and she's into bodybuilding now. So it's okay, all right. I mean, I said to my kids so often, if you want to go off the path, as we call it, I will still love you. But please, be a doctor. Be something good. Do good. Respectful people, very respectful clothes. I try to say, I will always accept you, but please do good. I said to my daughter, you can tell her she can live the way she wants. She doesn't have to explain herself to people. But when her friends said to her, Rachel, you're having so many kids, or, kind of criticizing her, I said, that's crossing boundaries. That's sort of the danger of the boundaries. I'm getting into my own consciousness now. I haven't covered the material yet, sorry, but I think it's just important because I think you're all dealing with, this is the intelligentsia, you're dealing with secular careers, and we're all dealing with people that are different. We can love them, we can even empower them. I told her to say, when people say, why did you leave? And she says, that's my choice. That we can love her with. We can empower, we can make them feel good. But in terms of coming back and criticizing us, that's respecting boundaries. So it's that kind of thing. We have to respect, but also we have to respect me back. So anyway, sort of on a tangent there. Okay. So bringing people towards Torah, that's really, we have to keep that in mind. Part of love is that. Now the Tana of Rabbi Akiva, bringing them towards Al Kitab. Okay. The Tana of Rabbi Akiva lived at the end of the 1st century CE, the beginning of the century, a couple hundred years after Hillel. And he said that Leviticus 19:8 is a great teaching in the Torah. Klal Gadol means a important rule, but it also means encompassing rule. So it's the most important. And these stories are on the level of living folklore throughout the Jewish world. Now, who is one's neighbor? These commentators say every human being, according to a discussion between Rabbi Akiva and Rabbi Azai, based on Genesis. This is the book of the generations of Adam. In the day that God created man, in the likeness of God made he him. So because all people are in the image of God, all human beings are your neighbors. And going on to say that love needs to be intense enough for one willing to sacrifice one's ease and even one's life in order to serve God. Again, a little further, it's conditioned on love for God and love for the commandments. There is a connection between loving people and loving God and wanting to bring them closer to God. And conversely, we see in Pirkei Avot, which is also the Mishnah, part of the Mishnah, hatred of fellow creatures, sinat kapriyot, is declared by Rabbi Yoshua and Hananiah to be one of the 3 things that drive a person out of the world. And here's, in terms of creatures, the creativity. Another Talmudic teaching describes how Judah Anasi was struck with pain because he did not show mercy on a calf being led to slaughter, and only after saving a mouse's nest was he forgiven. And, okay, so up till now there seems an indivisible connection between loving one's fellow and loving God. And to get to the Hebrew word, which is the same as the Arabic, it's alif, bet, and alif, hey, and bet. Do you have the Hebrew up there yet? Okay, so love is, in Hebrew, is ahava. Aleph, hey, bet is the 3-letter root. Now, hey and bet together are to give. Hav is to give. Yahav is, do I have Yahav? to provide. Yahav means to provide. So Alif is the first letter of the word ana in Arabic and ani in Hebrew, which is I. So ahava or ohevet is I love. So it starts with the letter Aleph. It starts with I. Okay. No one can give what they don't have. Okay. If I give, then I have to know who I am before I know what I can give. And sometimes I also wanted to add this, can love overcome everything? I think one thing that's special in Islam and Judaism, and maybe some conservative forms of Christianity, I don't know, is we do have the institution of matchmaking. The idea that someone else should objectively decide who your mate should be. There's something objective about that. And it's just sad, like one reason I really object to, let's say, if I had to learn Shakespeare, I don't want to learn Romeo and Juliet because it's such a terrible message, it's such a false message, and it's so wrong because just to look and say, I love them, you don't know who they are. And then what happens next is maybe they'll change for me because I love them and they'll love me. And then when at the end of the play, it's ridiculous. I mean, as we know, the akhira is what everyone's looking forward to. And it's a good deed to be married. So let's say if somebody, God forbid, loses a spouse, some men in my community, I know somebody, 30 days after he lost his beloved wife, I'm telling you, they were like brother and sister, they just could get married because they weren't related. And 30 days later, someone proposed a match to him. Because it's considered such a good deed to be married and it's sort of a overcoming your grief to be able to do the good deed of marrying someone a little younger who had a son. So he felt he could overcome this and become a stepfather to a needy child despite his grief. That's overcoming these sort of romantic Western feelings that really are not Abrahamic. And I think the core of that is, why does a matchmaker know more than I do? Because they look at your Aleph and his Aleph. And they see sort of the limits objectively as possible with Allah's help. See the limits of what each person can offer. And see why you really shouldn't be with that person or not with that person. And keeping in mind that if you find in a marriage, someone's marriage relationship, or even a friendship, if somehow a bridge can't be gapped, that's because just like you have an Aleph that really can't change, they also do. So if kids ask, couldn't their parents have stayed married for their love of the family, their love of each other, their love of their name in the community, the answer is no. They have an Aleph, they have an I, they have a nafs, that there's a solidity inside it. We can try to change, we can try to overcome, we can negotiate. Some people have terrible habits that are dysfunctional, and why can't they just get over it for their love for their person, another person, or their family, or even just their own name? That Aleph, there's a solidity to it. Now, in a way, I'm getting on my personal life experience of what I've noticed, and I'm not quoting Kitab here, I'm just quoting sort of how we are as Chassidic Jews and the community I live in, and our basic assumptions, and sort of what Al-Kitab has come into our lives, and just what I've seen between friendships, between with work relationships. And that way I think you can let go when a relationship doesn't work out, because it could be that they're a need, they're a not, they're Aleph, they're nas, it's just, there's a solidity that can't be gapped. Okay, so a little bit, so in this sense, love is more an action than a feeling, because it's having room to get. You need to know yourself well to know what you can give to others. Now, okay, if you want to move to Chaim Vital, also a Kabbalist, a mystic, shared that the law of love of the neighbor includes the non-Israelite as well as the Jew. they go on to include that love includes all people. Now, we start seeing a sort of unconditional love, although I just said people have their limits. There's the unconditional love, like the Tzaddik of the saint for their congregation. And this is what Rabbi Israel Baal Shem Tov, the founder of Chassidic, described the link between love of God and one's fellow, but also a level of total and unconditional love, that he preached an unequivocal love regardless of anyone's spiritual state. He loved the most iniquitous transgressor with the same boundless love with which he loved the greatest saint. He loved them as God loves them, as a father loves his children, regardless of who and what they are. Okay, so regarding, and I think in our society right now, that's probably an important thing to hold on to, because most people are not immune with what's happening with education and stuff. There's a lot of pressure against religious communities, so we sort of have to work on the part of loving people who seem to be doing things that are not okay, because the Mahdi hasn't come yet, hasn't arrived yet. Regarding the concept of ummah, if you look at Jewish teachings about the word love, you will see commentary going back and forth between loving all people and loving one's fellow Jew. So you'll see sort of Ahavat Yisrael is loving the fellow Jew, loving your neighbor. You'll see an essay, it'll be flipping back and forth. It can sound a bit tribal. Do you mean loving other Jews or loving everybody? And the point is that in order to love honestly, it's easy some ways to love someone far away, because you can romanticize them, you don't really have anything to do with them. It can be a little more challenging to love your family members and your community members, because you know their shortcomings, you know their faults and things like that. So trying to increase love within an I was describing to Sister Fazia that we feel the temple fell because of infighting among the Jewish people, of hatred between the Jewish people, to the extent that one group burned the wood, oil, and meat supplies that another group had stored that could have sustained the Jews in Jerusalem 2,000 years ago for 20 years. To the extent of hatred they had from each other, because they didn't like that group, they actually burned the food supplies down. It would have sustained them. Why did they do that? They also wanted the Jews to rise against the Romans, and there was a whole political reason for that. But that is internal hatred. So you'll see a lot of, we have to have internal love among the Jewish people, because that's what caused the first temple to fall. But I think that if you hear imam or somebody saying Muslims need to love each other, that's not really exclusive. It's because if you can learn to love others in your Muslim ummah, which is so big and so diverse, that is the best practice for loving all people. So it's actually ultimately, it might sound exclusive, but it's ultimately the best practice for loving everybody. Now here's something, last thing.
It's like love oneself before loving others.
Well,
You like that?
you have to love yourself. Yes, you have to love yourself first. That's true, and take care of yourself first. Yes. And then you have something to give. Now, the last thing, the first place that a word is used in the Torah is significant in understanding its fundamental meaning in terms of Jewish exegesis. And the first time the word for love is used, ahava, is during Abraham's greatest trial, when he was commanded to take Isaac up into Har Moriah. And he said, "Take, please, your son, your only one, whom you love." And